Morning. Good morning, welcome to our July 4th Sunday. It was to be Freedom Day before that changed, and we had planned and we're still going ahead with a Testimony Sunday today, so that's an invitation to basically an open mic. If there's things that the Lord's laid on your heart and you want to share, then after a period of worship and prayer, you're invited to come down. Remember, though, this is live stream, so if you're going to go into great detail, just remember it's going out on the World Wide Web, so you might want to use first name only. Not sure who or is going to say what, but we trust that whatever is said will be glorifying to the Lord and encouraging to us, His people. Welcome to you if you're joining us over the live stream. Or indeed, if you're catching up later, trust the Lord will bless you. One of the contributions has come in from someone who joins us over the live stream. So that's brilliant, and we'll share that a bit later. Psalm 66. Shout with joy to God, all the earth. Sing the glory of his name. Make his praise glorious. Say to God, how awesome are your deeds. So great is your power. Your enemies cringe before you. All the earth bows down to you. They sing praise to you. They sing praise to your name. And it won't be long before we can sing praise to the Lord's name. If the news is to be believed, and you can practice your COVID secure singing this morning with 3 fairly upbeat and lively songs to get us going. In a mood of sort of celebration, really, and just thanksgiving for the goodness of God. And along the lines of celebration, we want to celebrate with Val for the arrival of Henry VI. 6th grandchild, great choice of name. Great choice of name. And we wish, the whole family well, and we share your joy. So well done, Val. Well done, Val. So, without more ado, let's have 2 or 3 songs. The first of them, My Lighthouse, then Standing on This Mountain, and then Happy Day. I think the My Lighthouse song featured on the Central Baptist Association's worship, which was nice. Nice to be asked about. So, good, let's get going, and let's worship God as we sing. If you're able, I invite you to stand.
In my wrestling and in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. And you are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. Silence, you won't let go. In my questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You carry me safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. What tomorrow brings. With each morning I'll rise and sing. My God's love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. My lighthouse, and I will trust the promise that you will carry me safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storms. Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storms. Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storms. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, and I will trust the promise you will carry me safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore.
Standing on this mountain top, looking just how far we've come, knowing that for every step you were with us. Kneeling on this battleground, seeing just how much you've done, knowing every victory is your power in us. Scars and struggles on the way, but with joy our hearts can say, yes, our hearts can say. Never once did we ever walk alone. Never once did you leave us on our own. You are faithful, God, you are faithful. Kneeling on this battleground, seeing just how much you've done, knowing every victory is your power in us. Scars and struggles on the way, but with joy our hearts can say, yes, our hearts can say. Never once did we ever walk alone. Never once did you leave us on our own. You are faithful, God, you are faithful. You are faithful, God, you are faithful. Scars and struggles on the way, but with joy our hearts can say, never once did we ever walk alone. Carried by your constant grace, held within your perfect peace. Never once, no, we never walk alone. Never once did we ever walk alone. face to face. I am yours, Jesus, you are mine. Endless joy, perfect peace. Earthly pain finally will cease. Celebrate, Jesus is alive. He's alive. And oh, happy day, happy day. You wash my sin away. And oh, happy day, happy day. I'll never be the same. Forever I am changed. And oh, what a glorious day. What a glorious way that you have saved me. And oh, what a glorious day. What a glorious name. Yeah. And oh, happy day, happy day. You wash my sin away. And oh, happy day, happy day. I'll never be the same. Forever I am changed. I'll never be the same.
Well, that was fun. Do you have a seat? We want to just come to God with praise on our hearts. Lord, we just want to thank you. Thank you for the wonderful gift of life that you have poured out to us. We thank you for every blessing, the richness, the fullness, the faithfulness that you have shown to us through these days, these difficult and dark days. You are our lighthouse. You lead us forward. You protect us from running aground on the rocks of despair and hopelessness. Lord, you send us into the deep. You allow us to experience fresh adventures of faith. You have led us, and you will lead us still. And we want to say thank you. Thank you that the best is yet to come. Thank you for everything that has been. But thank you, Lord, that what is to come, what is to be discovered, what is to be seen, what is to be experienced when we see you face to face is incomparably better than what we have experienced so far. And we thank you, Lord. We thank you for every tear. Thank you for every doubt. We thank you for every despondency, for in you they are met and transformed. So, Lord, on this day, as we stand in this place, as we meet in your name, we want to just say thank you and praise you for every blessing, for all the richness of your grace, for all the mercy of your love expressed and poured out to us, supremely shown to us on the cross, applied to us through the Spirit. Redemption, forgiveness, restoration, glorification is coming to those who believe. Oh, Father, help us just to rejoice in that, to be faithful in our fellowship, to be expectant in our prayers, to be hopeful in our living. In all things, Lord, that you would have the glory, that you would take the honour. For this is our desire and our prayer and the reason why we're here. So help us, Lord, we ask. Help us to share stories, to listen for your voice in the voices of others, to enjoy the silences, Lord, just to be present to you this day, we ask in your name. Amen. So junior church is running, so that just in case you're at home watching this thinking, I wonder how I can deal with my children. Well, you can send them to junior church first and third Sundays of each month is the plan. If you're coming up to share today and you think this is just a bit too personal to go out onto the World Wide Web, it is possible for the live stream simply to be paused. A little message turns up on the tallies or screens at home, which says basically we'll be back in a minute. We're having a sharing time. Just nod at Andy and he'll do that. Today, we will have, after the service is finished, Tina's got something that she does want to share just within the fellowship, so she'll come up at the close of the service. So, just before there's this mad stampede of people coming up to share, let's see. I just thought brilliant newsletter here. Thank you, Asanta. There's just a couple of things I wanted to draw to your attention from the newsletter. First, if you don't get it, it's on the website. So if it doesn't come on email, you can get it from the website. If you can't access the website and you're desperate to get it, we can find a way of getting it to you. This Tuesday evening at 8 o'clock, there's the monthly prayer. So if you're willing and able to come and pray with us, that would be wonderful. We're in here, a COVID-secure prayer. We often pray for the food bank and stuff, and the folk of the food bank in that service. Kathy's written a bit about the church finances, saying how they are holding up or otherwise. Tina's going to say a little bit about part of that. But at the last paragraph, I just wanted to share with you, because we want to go back, if we can, to live worship when we've got a live musician. We have several. But it's getting them in the right place at the right time. But also, because we want to keep live streaming, we need a second camera. So one points this way, and then one will point across to where the music is. And with all technology, it's not cheap. And I was thinking that maybe those who are zooming in or watching over the internet might like to consider what Kathy's written there about the cost of another piece of kit, which is another thick end of £1,000 to put in place. But I think it would be great if we could get that up and running by September. That's the plan. So we'd have a mixture of taped songs or live worship. The prayer garden is coming on a treat, and we thank folk from within the church for their work. There are some that you perhaps won't know the names of because they're not from the church, they're from the community, who've also been working on the garden at different levels. There's our neighbour over there, Chris, who's been wielding his chainsaw. There's Joe, not the Joe who's directly opposite us, but the Joe who's directly opposite the prayer garden, who's been supplying us with plants and other things. And then there's Mark, who's been doing a lot of the spade work. So we thank them as well. You'll see from the newsletter that All Sorts is about to launch at the end of July. And you'll see that in September, we hope to run an alpha course. So if you'd like a face-to-face alpha course, if you'd like to know more, then just the website has a booking form. So those are the notices. I'm going to stop talking and hope that somebody starts.
Morning, everybody. When Nick suggested to me sharing something about living through this lockdown, I knew exactly what I wanted to say, because him up there has been nagging me about sharing this for some time. First of all, I need to apologise to my house group, who will have heard all of this before, so sorry, house group. In 2016, I was made redundant from a company after 20 years. I wasn't worried about not working there anymore. Believe me, after 20 years, I was more than ready to move on. The trouble was, what was I going to do now? After a short stint at Tesco's, thank you, Martin, I managed to get a position as a receptionist at Spurgeon's Children's Centres. I really liked that job and felt that we made a real contribution to the lives of some very troubled families and children. I felt as though we could help some of the people attending our centre to have a better outcome in the future because of what they had learned or experienced with us. But after 3 years there, the council took all the children's centres back under its own control, so I was facing redundancy again. I felt that being made redundant twice in 3 years was a bit unfair, But during all this time, I had confidence that God was in control. Although sometimes things haven't always been easy, I knew God would have a plan for me because we have a faithful God. So in 2019, I went back to the food industry for a short contract. And just as that contract finished, COVID hit. I did have a couple of interviews lined up, and they just evaporated. No one wanted to do any face-to-face interviews, and employers hadn't got their heads around Zoom interviews yet. Fortunately, my husband managed to get me into where he works last year, and I'm still there. It is a company called Softbox Systems, which produce temperature-controlled packaging for the food and pharmaceutical industries. And yes, we make the packaging for Pfizer vaccine. So if any of you have had the Pfizer vaccine, it was shipped in one of our boxes. I thank God every day I have a job. During all this time, I have only been without a job for 4 weeks. That's not bad since 2016. I really believe it's God that's provided me with opportunities for positions, particularly when there were and are still thousands of people losing their livelihoods every week. I must admit, I have been puzzled as to why I have been looked after so well, and I think it is so that I can witness to the incredible faithfulness of our Father. He will never just leave us and walk away. There have been so many God instances in the last 5 years, it can only be his wonderful, loving nature, so I talk about that whenever I can. I'd just like to finish by reading Matthew 6, verses 25 and to 34, which has meant an awful lot to me, particularly in the last 5 years. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat and drink, or about your body, or what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap, or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They do not labour or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon, in all of his splendour, was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, for all of these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. I know it's really hard not to worry, particularly if you are facing something really big and scary. I am blessed because I'm not a natural worrier, but there are people that worry more than others, like my late father, who could honestly have worried for England. He just worried all the time. Yet what I have found though, is that if you read Matthew 6, verses 25 to 34, through very slowly, several times, and let it really sink into your consciousness, it will help calm nerves and settle the mind. Thank you for listening.
Morning, everybody. And hello to those of you that are watching through some technical device that is beyond me. I've entitled my testimony, Locked Down, Locked In, but Loved. Are not all angels and ministering spirits sent to those who will inherit salvation? That's from Hebrews 1, verse 14. I can honestly stand here and say that I really enjoyed the first lockdown. I'd had quite a stressful 2 years with purchasing and selling houses, a wedding, moving here, birth of a baby, death of mother-in-law, some stresses and things within the family with the children. So when that first lockdown came, it was a real time of rest and refreshment for me. The weather was beautiful, so I was able to really enjoy nature. The garden we were able to really get on top of. It was wonderful to be able to go for a walk with Nick and the dog, because usually I was at work when that happened, so I wasn't able to do that. And for Nick and I to spend quality time together. So I don't know how other people found the first lockdown, but for me, I really enjoyed it. I was also, because I'd been in education for 20 odd years, I was used to having like a 6 or 8 week block of holiday. So that wasn't a challenge at all. But I went back to work. I was one of the early ones to go back to work, working in a garden centre that was deemed essential. So I went back to work in the May. And then I started to feel unwell. I started to have a few tummy issues. And I thought at first it was just stress, because we were really busy at work. And as you can imagine, not many people actually at that point in time were prepared to return to work and face the public. So we were short-staffed and overworked. And so I felt at first that it was just the stresses that I talked about and work that was making me feel a bit poorly. Eventually, I took myself to the doctor because I'd lost quite a lot of weight. I thought at first I got IBS, so I just restricted my diet somewhat, which I was telling myself that's why I'd lost weight. But eventually, I did the right thing and went to the doctor. And initially, they again thought it was just lifestyle and stress. But then they investigated me for bowel cancer and colitis. And I was informed by a consultant at the hospital that I definitely didn't have cancer, that it was colitis. And I was waiting for a colonoscopy just to confirm that diagnosis. On the 13th of November, I phoned our lovely Emma. Now, she's my first ministering angel. I phoned Emma because I started being sick, and I wanted to know if it was some of the medication that the doctor had given me that was causing me to be sick. And Emma, in her wisdom, said, "No, Sue, you need to get yourself down to A&E. I know it's not the best time. COVID had hit. The hospitals were chock-a-block, but that was her advice to me. So having phoned her for advice, I thought it would be wrong to ignore her advice. So having contacted the emergency doctor, Nick took me to A&E and had to leave me there. I was 12 hours in A&E before I was admitted to the medical ward, where I went every possible test that you could have. Scans, x-rays, ECGs, blood tests. I was on drips for this, that and the other. I had no idea what was going on. I was admitted to the medical ward and I was there for 2 days. But I can honestly say that from the beginning I entered hospital to this present day, I have a total sense of peace. And I know that's due to the prayers that are being continually sent up for me, that I've just got this inner sense of peace. So I wasn't anxious or worried at the time there. I just didn't know what was going on. Eventually I got admitted to a side ward, not the ward that I should be on, but as close to the ward that I should be on they could get me to. I had a very unpleasant night. If you want to know about it, I can tell you personally, but I had a very unpleasant night there. And then in the morning came my second ministering angel. I'm going to call her Zoe, because obviously I don't want to use their proper names just to protect them. And I can't remember off the top of my head what her title was, but it was a new title that I'd never heard of. It was like clinical, something, I don't know. But her role, she was like a dog with a bone. Her role was to make sure that everything that I needed was happening, so that the blood tests were happening and they were going to the right place, that the results were coming back, that the consultants knew what was going on. And she really was like a dog with a bone, and she continually came to me to inform me of what was going on and what this next stage was to expect, what to expect that day, whether I was having blood tests, blood transfusion, more drips. But she was the one that kept me informed the whole time. So she was my second ministering angel. On the 19th of November, I got the tragic news that I'd got bowel cancer and that it had spread to my liver and my lungs. That was a dark time. I was given that information on my own, in quite an unpleasant way, to be fair. In fact, the assistant to the consultant came back to see me later to apologise in the way that I'd been told and the way that it had been dealt with. So I was in a very dark place at that point. I had to phone Nick and let him know. I had to phone the children and let them know, and I had to phone my parents. That was a really hard thing to do, but I knew God was with me and helping me to get through that. Come the evening, I was quite upset. And as I came out of the toilet, my third ministering angel arrived. And I'm going to call him Kim. I'd met him the day before. As I'd been reading my Bible, he spoke to me, and not only was he a nurse at the hospital, but he was also a Pentecostal pastor in Aylesbury. So we'd had a little chat about faith and what we believe, and he knew that Nick was a minister, and he was waiting for me when I came out of the toilet, and he said, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm not good." And he said, "No, I know. I'm going to do the medication round, and then I'm going to come and see you." So he came to see me, and he didn't just pop in to see me. He was with me for quite a long time. And he gave me this verse, 1 Peter 2, verse 24. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, so that we might die to sin and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. And he said to me, I want you to repeat that as a mantra every day, as often as you can. By his wounds you have been healed. And then he prayed for it. I asked him if he would pray for me. And it wasn't just a little quick prayer. Obviously, being a Pentecostal pastor, you can imagine. It was a really powerful prayer that he prayed over me. The following day, he wasn't on my side ward. He'd been given a different side ward to go to. But he did pop in to see me and to encourage me and to give me more words of scripture and to pray over me again. So he was my third ministering angel. Then I was sent down to have a stent to put through the tumour in my bowel because it was blocking the bowel. Unfortunately, that wasn't very successful. So I came back up onto the ward quite deflated again because we were no further forward with my treatment. I'd been sick at this point continually for about 5 days. Then Joe, I'm going to call him, my fourth ministering angel came to see me. He was a very loud character within the ward, and he encouraged everybody. He was just one of those people that you couldn't help smile when he entered the ward. And he too was a committed Christian, and he'd seen me reading my Bible, and he'd had a few words with me during the time that he was looking after me. And I told him what had happened, that I'd been sent for a stent and it hadn't been successful. They were going to try again with a smaller camera the following day or the day after, but they didn't hold out much hope. And he prayed for me, and he gave me words of encouragement, and he lifted my spirit. So he was my fourth ministering angel. Unfortunately, when they went to stent me again, it wasn't successful, so they took me straight to the operating theatre, where I had the tumour and lower bowel removed, and I have a stoma fitted. From there, I then went on to... Oh no, I've missed a bit, that's right, because when I was on my second side ward, this is where the locked-in comes into play, because I was woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning to be informed that the lady opposite me had COVID. So I had to wear a mask 24/7 whilst I was sleeping, whilst I was awake. And I had to shut myself off from everybody, so my curtains down the left side and across the right side were closed. Fortunately, I was by a window, so I could have the window open. All the other patients were complaining because of the cold air, but the nurses just brought them blankets. So I was really not only locked down by Boris, but I was now locked into this tiny little area. I was only allowed out of my bed to go to the toilet and back again. The following day, I discovered that the lady next to me had also got COVID. At this point, the hospital was in total lockdown. There were no more beds available for anybody. The COVID wards were full, which is why these two ladies were still on my ward. And there were no visits allowed by anybody at all. So I felt totally locked in, just on my own, in this bed, with a wonderful view of the extractor system out of my window. After I'd had my operation, I was moved to an individual bay, an individual room, which was much more peaceful. I was able to get quite a lot of rest. And it was whilst I was in there that my fifth ministering angel came to see me. And I'm going to call her Chloe. And she was a Christian. Again, she'd seen me reading my Bible. And she witnessed to me about the miracle that had happened to her son, who had had bone cancer. And she was just encouraging me to believe in the healing power of God. So, what's all that got to do with being loved, you say? Well, I was locked down by Boris. At some point, I was locked in to a tiny little area in the room. But in those times of darkness, in those times of great need, I knew I was loved, because at those exact times, God sent me a ministering angel to lift my spirits, to encourage me, to keep me on my journey. I've got other stories too of where it obviously got around the ward that I was a Christian, and so other Christian nurses came in to talk to me, and I had other nurses come in to say, we can't believe your positive attitude, why are you so positive, tell me your story. So I was also, because of the encouragement of the ministering angels, I was also able to witness to other members of staff there. So I do thank God for that. But that hasn't stopped now I'm out of hospital. I have some days when I'm not very good at all. And you know, on those days, a bunch of flowers will arrive, either from somebody within the fellowship, from somebody from my fellowship back in Woodstock, from people at work, from family, or I'll get a card through the post telling me that they're thinking of me and they're praying for me and giving me words of encouragement. Or I'll get sent a little text message. Or I'll get sent a little video. I've got one this morning from my sister-in-law, which I haven't opened yet. A little video of a worship song or somebody testifying. And they come at times when I am feeling quite low or feeling quite exhausted. I didn't know whether I was going to do this today because I've been quite tired recently. I'm waiting to start a course of steroids to go ready for holiday. But I thought, no, I've said I want to live as well as I can for as long as I can and testify to the glory of God. And I'm not going to let that devil stop me from getting here this morning and witnessing to you all about the glory of God and how he loves me and how he loves all of you.
Good morning. I'm sure all of you over the years have bought cards, one kind or another. I wonder what you look for when you buy a card. Do you look for the picture on the front? Do you look for the words inside? Do you look who printed it? Price always plays a part. Well, I had to buy a card for my daughter's birthday. I'm generous because it cost me £1.50. But it's printed by a company called Hallmark. Don't know if you've ever heard of them, but it's a company called Hallmark. It's an American company. And I did find out that this company has a motto. And this is the motto: when you care enough to send the very best. And it sort of coincides with March this year, when I received the newsletter from Pitstone, and there was a poem there. And I thought, this morning, that's just what we need, and I think that's proved it. And this is what the poem says. I sent my world a valentine 2,000 years ago. Delivery was urgent, so I asked my son to go. The message was so simple, the meaning very clear. I made you, and I love you, and I want to keep you near. It wasn't put in writing like the commandments long ago. Instead, my son just lived it out so everybody knows. He didn't build an army, no need when you're my son. Just spoke of peace and harmony, for that's why he had come. To show the world it's possible to live a life of peace, to love your neighbour as yourself, to turn the other cheek, to trust the one who made you and do his will on earth, instead of weighing everything up to see what it is worth. Continue on your journey with your eyes set on this goal, to follow in the footsteps of the one who saved your soul. No matter what the obstacles or problems you may face, remember that I love you and receive my saving grace. And when your race is over, the journey fully done, I will welcome and embrace you and say, a glad well done.
I just want to share with you something that happened during the first lockdown. There were lots of little things I could share, but just this one for now. My daughter and son-in-law and their family, the two small boys, were living in Shanghai. When COVID hit in China, they hightailed it back here as fast as they could, sort of putting everything in a suitcase and getting on the last plane back here. January 2020. They lived with us for a while, and at the end of February, our son-in-law was summoned back to Shanghai to work. So our daughter stayed here with the children. They have their own house in a village not far from here, and they were expecting to move back into that. An answer to prayer was that they got their keys given to them early so that they could move into their house for that first weekend of March. So daughter and two boys moved back into their house, and they began the process of settling down. And another answer to prayer was that grandson got a place in the village school, so he was just 5 minutes down the road in a lovely little school where he still is. And then lockdown was announced. And I just felt I couldn't leave my daughter alone with 2 small children, coping without husband and father, who was so many thousands of miles away in Shanghai. For her mental health and for my well-being as well, I just felt being alone would not be good. So I left my husband, who I knew could cope more than adequately without me, and I moved to live with my daughter, to be with her for what turned out to be more than 3 months. We hoped that son-in-law would be able to return, but he needed work to be able to get back here. Once he left Shanghai, he wouldn't have a job, so he needed to have work, and I prayed about that, a lot, but nothing seemed to be happening. Anyway, about the end of May or the beginning of June, he announced that he had an interview, which was a Zoom interview. So he was in Shanghai, the interview was from here. We prayed about that, but when we asked him how it went, he said that it wasn't very good. The Zoom, the computer has messed up his presentation, and he didn't feel that it had gone well at all, and he was really quite anxious about it. So anxious, in fact, he couldn't sleep that night. So at midnight, being the time difference between here and Shanghai, he went back onto the website to have a look and see whether they had answered him and sent him any notification of his job. They had. He had the job. So he could come home, and it was such a relief. And I know that God gave him that job to bring him home. And at the end of the middle of June, he came home, and the family were able to start the process of settling in together. But I'm just so grateful to God for that. And in every testimony we've heard so far, how God just loves us so much, and he provides for us all in our different circumstances and our different situations. You know, there's not the one size fits all. He's not a one size fits all God. And that's good. Thank you.
This is just 2 short things that have happened amongst many others. But as many of you know, there's been music exams here, and we had one day, and there seemed an insurmountable problem, and it just didn't seem to be solvable. And then, like Sue said, a guardian angel stepped in and solved this problem so that this little lad could take his music exam. And I just felt that it was a miracle from God that in this building this happened, and it was all in a matter of minutes. So I thank God for that. And I also think that his presence was here in this building when it was happening. The other thing that's happened is that many weddings have been cancelled, and a particularly wedding that my son wanted to go to, that I was invited as his partner, hadn't happened, and it was in Jersey, and it had been cancelled twice, and this was the 3rd attempt, and there were so many problems. I just didn't think this is going to happen. And because Paul doesn't now live at home with me, it was going to be time with us together, albeit in a very short time, and a lot of wedding things that happen. And various things happened. We were very late getting to the airport. I thought the plane would have gone, but it hadn't. We had problems through security, and a very nice man solved it by finding things that we'd lost, like a wallet, passport, you name it, we'd lost it. We got on the plane, we got off the other end, we had to have a proper COVID test. I didn't have to isolate because I had been double vaccinated, but Paul did. He'd made no preparation for this. The wedding was happening the next day, so they did the tests, and it said he had to isolate. Well, I didn't know whether that meant that he could come into the hotel room or not, but in fact it did. And the results came through at midnight, and bearing in mind that he was supposed to be an usher at this wedding at 2:00 in the afternoon, I felt that was a miracle, because they said it could take up to 12, 24 hours. So I really believe that God was with us and with our family, and for that I thank him.
Hello, everybody. We're all really good at this now, aren't we? Bless you all. And especially to the people up there and the people at home. Be still and know that I am God. How vital that's been over the last 18 months. Be still. We've all had to stop the rushing around. I was guilty. Zoom meetings became the norm. I remember one Zoom meeting when I said, gosh, I've left the socks on the radiator. And that would never happen if they were coming to us. Yes, standards did drop. The advantages of a week in the garden, enjoying God's rich provision. With time, I planned food, booked things online, baked, and put on a lot of weight. Then just sitting, what a luxury. And know, be still and know. At a time when we expanded our vocabulary, it started with COVID, lockdown, furlough, and the daily death count. We found ourselves knowing we were vulnerable. I found myself praying for single mums in high-rise flats with no aircon, teaching children with no facilities, desperate. And when you live hand to mouth, there's no room for crisis. The tragedies unfolded on our screens. We knew a lot more about the effects this pandemic was having over the whole world. But with all this knowledge, I knew that he was God. The God who cares for everything. The God who cares for everyone. The God who controls everything. When we settled into our new masked, isolated Zoom world, I became a little restless. And a lovely friend gave me this gorgeous poster which has been hanging in my bathroom, which says, don't feel totally personally responsible for everything. That's my job, God. And it hangs in my bathroom. I became a little restless, and although the house was still untidy and needed a good clean, the garden was a joy. Vegetables all standing in rows, greenhouse groaning with hopeful colour for the following year for flower beds. Nick and Sue had started a food bank for the residents in the village, and as Sue became increasingly unwell, it seemed sensible to support Nick and help. But God had other ideas. And soon I found he gave me a heart for the people we delivered to. Emma was on board, and as things progressed, Nick was able to take more of a back seat. Wow, have we seen God work? The community have been amazing, bringing food week after week. Martin organised some funds so I could top up in areas where there was need, and we moved forward. And then the team grew. Bob and Sheila, then Margaret, joined us. And the opportunities have been varied and often interesting to be able to help. My washing machine doesn't work. Within a week, she'd been offered a new machine. It was transported and installed. That's God. That's our God. A bit short this month for gas and electric. Funds made available. I'm moving to Aylesbury. Help with moving costs and a large moving bag of gifts to stock her new kitchen. Every time a need is expressed, we offer prayer, and then we talk about how we can practically help. I've tried contacting the council because the flat near me is empty, and I'm worried about squatters. Drafting a letter to the council, that's something we can do. This is an ongoing one, so watch this space. My bed's falling apart, which neatly brings me to the Turpin charity. This local charity contacted us to see if we'd like some funds to help with the food bank. Who would say no? It's a local charity that funds, and you can apply for a grant if you live in the village, or live in the parish, sorry. And anyone living in the parish can request a grant for a specific need. So with Sally's help, the food bank at the Baptist Church applied for a grant towards our work and was awarded £2,000. That's our God. And it was interesting when I was doing the application with Sally, because she said, how much do you think how much would you like to ask for? And she mentioned 2 figures, and I went for the top one, and we got it. So my bed's falling apart and the springs are scratching my legs becomes an application for a grant. This again is ongoing, please pray. We've gained a lovely willing gardener for the prayer garden, and it's been a great joy to get to know him and the family. I am God, and wow, has he shown us. It's been a really hard 18 months for everyone. No one's been unaffected. But to be still and know that I am God is what's brought so many of us through. And as a little footnote, I've put, if anyone has a working vacuum cleaner, we have a home for it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. In my forgetful nature, I had forgotten to write a testimony, but I couldn't sit there and not share a little bit about what's happened for me and my girlfriend over the last 18 months. As we went into lockdown, I was working from home and got the sudden urge to try and find a girlfriend when we were in a pandemic. So I thought about it, prayed about it, and I thought I was ready. 3 months went by and nothing, and trial and error, many failures during that process. Nothing was happening. So I gave it a break and was ready to kind of give up. And then I just felt the need just to stay one more week on these dating apps, modern world. And on my last day, the deadline, this profile popped up, and I was like, okay, this is one I think I can hold on for. Eventually she came back after being on another date with another guy, but I'll let that one go. And that was Cara. So that was in the August, just to set the scene. We'd been together sort of 5 months, had great foundations, had a great time together, got to know each other's families. In January, her mum was diagnosed with a rare form of sarcoma, which shook the whole family and Cara quite a lot. And I just wanted to sort of tell a time where we really felt tangibly that we could feel God's presence, and so a lot of people would be just able to explain that way with, oh, that's a great coincidence, and there's another coincidence, and another one. So over the next 2 months, it was sort of repeated tests and trying to find out what was going on. And I still think they don't really know what they're treating. They described it that you've got more chance of winning the Euro Millions lottery than catching this form of cancer, which was a tough one for them to take. Cara was also facing the prospect of having foot surgery. She's got bunions at the right old age of 24 on both feet, so was facing, she needed to have surgery with that, but was told by the surgeon that she wouldn't have that surgery this side of Christmas. Her mum had started chemotherapy in March, and Cara was starting to struggle with that. She went into work one night, she's a nurse. She went in to start her night shifts and broke down as soon as she got into her manager. At that point was told she needs to take some time for stress. So as she got back from her shift, at sort of 8, 9 in the morning, normally she kind of heads to bed straight away, and for some reason she was up. And she stayed up, and just as she was about to roll over to go to sleep at 11 in the morning, her phone rang, which she wasn't very happy about, but she saw it was an Oxford number, which is where she lives. And she answered it and was told that she was being called to go for surgery the following week. at a time where she was needed to be signed off for stress, which she was completely opposed to. She didn't want to do that. She was told she's going to have to take 3 months off work and go home and spend at least 6 weeks living with her family to be cared for and looked after while she recovered. The timing was impeccable. We just couldn't, we thank God so much and thank everybody for the prayers that were going up for Cara's mum especially, and God's worked in that situation so well. So she was sent home she was sent to go to surgery. While she was in hospital, her mum was diagnosed with neutropenia after being in hospital for a week with chemotherapy, so she has to go back into hospital, which at the time was heartbreaking. Cara was stuck in hospital on her own. She couldn't see her mum. Her mum was in a different hospital in Oxford, and she was just so broken. That delayed her chemotherapy again for a week, which was bad because she wanted to get it over and done with. Fast forward to May half term, Cara and I had booked to go to Northern Ireland, which is where her mum's family is. They're all over there. She's Northern Irish, and we'd booked a time to go over to Northern Ireland, which should have been her mum's week 3, but because she was neutropenic, was pushed back. So it was her last week where she was good. No, she should have been going into chemo that week, but because of the neutropenia and going back into hospital, that meant that was her good week, and she was able to go as well. So we were able to have more time. And there were just so many moments where we just think, this is God's timing, like so perfectly falling into place. We can see it so tangibly. She was sent home for eventually 8 weeks to spend with her mum, where she hasn't been able to have that over the last sort of nearly 18 months of being a nurse. So worried about the risk of infection, she was told she can't do anything, but she needs to be with her, be at home and be with her mum. So we just wanted to, thank God and thank everybody for their prayers. And just wanted to say that God's timing is impeccable. It's not coincidence, and it is Him working for us. Thank you.
Sorry. I did say there was one that had come in from the viewing ins. It's actually from my brother called Tim. I'll read out his text and then I'll explain a little bit, and then I think we're going to have to close because of the time, and then have Tina's other testimony. So my brother writes, Nick, watching Aston Clinton service from yesterday, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to contribute to next Sunday's service. However, if I am, going through the issues I've been dealing with, I feel that this statement from the Word for the day may be of help to others. The only fear a Christian should entertain is the fear of sin. All other fears are from Satan, sent to confuse and to weaken us. My brother Tim is happy for me to share that he suffers with panic attacks and is on strong medication to control those and other things. He's given up a very stressful job and is enjoying retirement, but nevertheless still suffers with very difficult days. And so when he sent this text, I was really thrilled that he would be so strong in the faith. And although there is fear and panic, he holds to this statement: the only fear a Christian should entertain is the fear of sin. All other fears are from Satan, sent to confuse and weaken us. So Tim pushes through, and he pushes through with God, the faithful God, who he follows where he is. So thank you, Tim, for sharing that. Now there are 3 songs, but we're just going to have one. Then we will finish, and then Tina will come forward. I'm keen that we do finish because obviously Junior Church is running, and it'll be long for them. So we'll finish with the Lord's My Shepherd song, and then God's blessing to you out there in wherever you're watching and viewing this. And then Tina, if you'd like to come forward, and I'll go and see how Faith's getting on. Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
The Lord's my shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me lie in pastures green. He leads me by the still still waters. His goodness restores my soul, and I will trust in you alone, and I will trust in you alone, for your endless mercy follows me, your goodness will lead me home. He guides my ways in righteousness, and he anoints my head with oil, and my cup it overflows with joy. I feast on his pure delight, and I will trust in you alone, and I will trust in you alone, for your endless mercy follows me, your goodness will lead me home. And though I walk the darkest path, I will not fear the evil one, for you are with me, and your rod and staff are the comfort I need to know. And I will trust in you alone, and I will trust in you alone, for your endless mercy follows me, your goodness will lead me home, and I will trust in you alone, and I will trust in you alone, for your endless mercy follows me, your goodness will lead me home.
Please sit down.